Hey guys, Music Ninja Matt here. Basically going to be talking about what do I read from Marvel in this video. There'll be a DC video as well. If the Marvel and DC videos do well, I could do an indie one as well. The way this is going to work, did all the titles that I had collected, put them in piles, grabs like the top issue, and I've put them in a kind of alphabetical order, but it's going to be jumping all over the place, because for this Marvel one, obviously we had Secret Wars, and then we had All New Different, Civil War 2, then Marvel Now 2.0, going into Secret Empire. So that's the timeline of it, but these are all over the place. Some of these books I may have only picked up an issue, some I would have picked up 20 plus issues, some of them I have the whole runs of. The first book is Uncanny Avengers. This was a book that I was like, oh, who's going to be on the team? What kind of thing is it going to be? But it's essentially just a Hawkeye book. And reading the first issue, it just didn't grip me enough that I wanted to carry on. It's written by David F. Walker with Carlos Pacheco on art. I will just say now, all of these names I'm going to get wrong. It's an interesting concept, but it wasn't the concept that I thought it was going to be, so I didn't pick any more of this up. We have All New, All Different Avengers, and this was an Avengers team I wasn't a huge fan of. It wasn't my personal choice for an Avengers team. It's written by Mark Waid with art by Adam Kubert. It's worth noting that the writers and artists change throughout these runs as well, because I started on issue 1, obviously. I only read up to issue 14. And by that time, the artist had stayed the same, but Jeremy Whitley was also writing. But I stopped with this because it's not an Avengers team I was too interested in. You know, it was an enjoyable book. One of the biggest things when reading comics is budget, and budget will always come to kick you in the ass. My Avengers team was the Uncanny Avengers, and that's the one I continued to read about. And as well, these books always suffer from things like this, where you end up having these events that will sometimes fuck with your books and all this kind of thing. I like the introduction of the new Wasp. We have Jane as Thor and Sam Wilson's Captain America. I'm not a fan of the younger heroes. I don't like Nova, I don't like Miss Marvel, and they kind of put me off the book as well. We then have Uncanny Avengers, and this was my Avengers team. It was the team I liked the most. I love Steve Rogers' Captain America. I thought it was an interesting blend, having the mutants, the Inhumans on the team as well. You got Jerry Duggan writing it, and Ryan Stegman on art, and I love the art in this. It was a shame Peter Parker Spider-Man didn't stick around for longer. I love how Deadpool was a big player in this. It was just the team that, for me, I loved their adventures more. I love the way it was written, the dynamic between the characters, such a mix of characters as well, and it did feel like a new Avengers to me. I read this all the way up to issue 23, because it kind of had a nice ending point to me. The thing was, the team has changed now, and a lot of the key players that I liked had gone. With this, it rounded out, like the whole story felt rounded out. On this last issue, it says Pepe Larraz was the artist for it. I'm just going to keep checking. It's like I said, the artist probably changes massively throughout. Got Black Panther, and there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce the names, and they're also backwards. Ta-Nehisi Coates and Brian Stelfreeze. I just found this such a hard jumping on point. I was excited to have a Black Panther title, and literally just reading it, I couldn't for the life of me keep up with it, and that was literally the main reason for why I was like, maybe this title is not for me. With a lot of these new issue ones, sometimes you can jump on no problem, other times you need a bit more context for them. The Contest of Champions, I thought this was going to be like a 4-issue miniseries, and then it just carried on, and I was like, oh, okay. Really interesting in as much as we had a load of characters that would never get their own book, or maybe don't have a home in the Marvel Universe, and they got to be displayed in this book, and that was something I really liked, and we got to see people from different realities as well. It's Al Ewing on the script, and Paco Medina on pencils for this, and it's like I said, it was an enjoyable book. I just had the mindset going in that it was going to be a mini-series, and when it wasn't, I was like, I don't really want to have to commit to this too much. One cool thing is obviously it was really setting up the Maestro, because for All New, All Different Marvel, they really wanted the Maestro to be a big bad. I read it up to issue 7, apparently, and they introduced the Ultimates, and it started sort of crossing over there. Rolled Marcellus on art by this issue. We have Captain America White, which apparently, so you had like Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Grey, Daredevil Yellow, and this was always meant to be part of those. I've got the whole set. Obviously it's the team of Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. I always loved this duo, and I really like this book. It's just a fresh kind of take on Captain America, and seeing some of those key moments throughout his life, which I really enjoyed, and I love the art style. For Captain America, for someone like me who was like, I love Cap, but trying to find some good jumping on point stories, some stories to really get to know the character, this is a fantastic one for it. One thing All New, All Different Marvel allowed me to do was characters like Black Panther, like Captain Marvel. These characters I'm not overly familiar with. I know from events more than solo titles, allowed me to read theirs. This was cool because she's working with Alpha Flight. It's a new direction for the character. You see her just kind of kicking ass up in space. It was just, again, some of these titles, it's not that they're bad titles. It's just that sometimes I find myself reading a title just for the sake of reading it, which to me is a waste of money. Like, it should be that I finish an issue and I cannot wait to pick up the next one. So I cut down titles more and more till I'm only on the ones that's how I feel about them. So I read up to issue 5 for Captain Marvel. A lot of these I went through the first story arcs. If issue 1 really didn't impress me, I just stopped. However, if not, I'd give the first arc a go and work it that way. So this is written by Tara Butters and I want to say Michelle Fazekas, with art by Chris Anker. That's what it says on issue 1, and the same for this one. We have a title I was super looking forward to, which is Steve Rogers' Captain America, because he is really up there as one of my favourite characters. And then obviously they did the Hydra twist on us, and it led into Secret Empire. This led to me continuing to read it, because Secret Empire is the next big event, but also I was like, oh, so it's not my Cap, right. I kind of don't care then, and it just kind of put me off of it. It's written by Nick Spencer. This one says art by Jesus Saz. I loved the new costume. I love the new shield. Obviously he becomes director of shield and all sorts. There's a lot that happens for Cap, but it is just all build up towards Secret Empire and Hydra's takeover. So I read up until issue 17. We were really into Secret Empire by then. It started, so I was like, I've got my build up, I don't really need any more. This art was done by Ramon Bax and Andres Guinaldo. This for me was more build up to the next big event, and Secret Empire looked like it was going to be bigger and better than Civil War 2 and Monsters Unleashed and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of Civil War 2, it's actually popped up on the pile. So Civil War 2, written by Bendis, with art by Marquez. This was a huge disappointment. Civil War is still probably my second favourite arc of all time. I was one of those people that really got into comics because of Civil War. So Civil War 2, part of me was like, oh, you did this for the movie. But another part was like, still, it's a sequel to one of my favourite comic book storylines. The thing is, it sucked. Tony's still at the forefront, but fighting against Captain Marvel, who felt really out of character, fighting over Ulysses and his powers to see the future, and should we, protect the future or change it? There wasn't a lot of war going on. The biggest war I saw was between Tony and the Inhumans, which took place mainly in the Inhumans book. One thing though, I love these covers. Do more of these nice hard covers. And it's a really nice looking book, and there are some cool moments. Just overall, a lot of characters feel out of character. There's some big deaths in there, some people taken off the table. I did buy some tie-ins. I got Ulysses because, Ulysses is the main guy. So to me, I was like, I want to read more about him. There weren't that many issues. Written by Al Ewing and Carl Kessel. Jeffdy. No idea. Paolo on art. And this was sort of seeing him develop his powers, definitely not needed, but was just an extra look at someone who's supposed to be our main character in Civil War 2. Probably my favourite thing about Civil War 2, Kingpin, the idea that, well, while the heroes are fighting themselves, this is the perfect time for villains to kind of rise up. And Kingpin's just always such a great character to see, always manipulate situations and really take charge of situations. So Matthew Rosenberg was the main writer, and then we've got a couple of artists. And then the last tie-in I picked up was the Choosing Sides tie-in. I think there were 6 issues, and each one focused on some different people. There was a Nick Fury story that went through, but it was what are some of the side characters doing, which it was interesting enough to pick up. This has got loads of different writers and artists because it's loads of different stories. We have got some Star Wars stuff in because it's still Marvel, Darth Maul. I do not read a lot of the Star Wars stuff unless it really tickles my interest. I usually just buy the trades, but when I saw Darth Maul, like there's a Mace Windu one coming out which I really want to pick up. But Darth Maul's a great character, and I love how when this is set, it's before Phantom Menace, and it's seeing a very early Darth Maul and seeing just how hungry he is to fight the Jedi, and just seeing a lot more how his mind works. And it's written by Cullen Bunn with Luke Ross on art. It's a very simple story, it's a very short story, it's 5 issues, but it's really enjoyable, and I'm happy that I picked it up. This is one, I feel like this was one of the last books I spoke about on Comic Comments before we sort of stopped doing the show. Deadpool versus Thanos. Just a full-on, ridiculous Deadpool story, and it's great fun. Every now and again you find these kind of stories where they are just fun, even if they don't add a lot. Written by Tim Seeley and Elmo Bondoc on art. I picked up the whole thing, really enjoyed it. With All New, All Different Marvel, you could tell the titles they were really pushing, because they're the ones that are already on issue 30-something, because they were just churning it out. Spider-Man was definitely one of them, so was Deadpool. Deadpool issue 1. I adored this Deadpool series. So it's written by Jerry Duggan, Mike Hawthorne penciling this issue here. I think the artist changes a lot. What I loved about this was obviously Deadpool goes through a lot. He fights Sabretooth and he deals with being a celebrity and the fallout of his first Mercs for Money group. All this kind of stuff. But what I loved was how it wasn't just a silly book. There were some incredible deep moments with Deadpool and his family. And you just saw Deadpool get really dragged through the shit at times. And it just covered every kind of story tone you could want, which is why I just kept reading this, because it wasn't just a stupid jokey book or whatever. It had the perfect amount of drama and all sorts in it. We got side stories looking at Deadpool 2099 and Deadpool's daughters. So much happens in this series, and it's one of my favourites for sure. I have in fact stopped reading it now. That's because they're going down a different direction with it. So I've got Deadpool 31 here. Duggan's still writing it. The art on this one, Matteo Lolli. And the reason I stopped reading it was because I was like, I see what kind of direction they're going in. Because I think it's the Despicable Deadpool. They're bringing out a new Deadpool title. And they're hinting that Deadpool's going to start being more of a bad guy and an asshole again. And I was like, well, if that's the case, no. And not for me, thanks. I kind of like what you were doing. So this was the last issue I picked up. It then jumps into Secret Empire. So this is one of the really rare titles that I'm actually just still reading. And it's Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has had, again, a load of different artists and whatnot on it. So Jason Aaron writing it. I'm pretty sure both the writings changed. So's the artist, like I said, it always does over these. And then Chris Bachalo on pencils. The reason I'm still reading this series, the art is insane. Like, I love the page layouts and designs and how crazy it all is. I love Doctor Strange as a character, the way he's being written here, how he has got this silly attitude about him but is still serious. I like how they established rules on magic and showed some of the side effects of magic. We had the Last Days of Magic storyline. we've seen characters like the Orb pop up, and Dormammu, and Mordo, and it's just such a perfect title. And in actual fact, I'm fairly certain this Secret Empire and the Generations thing that's going on at the moment are the only books by Marvel I'm still picking up. And it is just because I read Doctor Strange and I adore it each time, and I'm excited for the next issue each time. And because it's had that effect, I am still reading it. We've got Daredevil, which obviously I was going to pick up because I have loads of the old Daredevils and I absolutely adored them. This is written by Charles Soule with artist Ron Garney. It's Daredevil with his apprentice, and there's, they're fighting against the Hand, and Elektra turns up. The thing was, it just didn't have the same magic that I'm used to from other Daredevil stories that I've read. So I collected the first arc. So I have up to issue 7. Matteo Buffagni jumped on to do art. This is a really interesting title, Drax. I loved the character in the movie. What really attracted me to this book was CM Punk's name on it, if I'm being honest. With this book, I've got the whole run. I've got issues 1 to 11. I think it ended at the right time, because this is such a weird book where, it's a fun book. It's a fun superhero book, but sometimes it's a little too silly, I think. I love how Drax is like, well, I'm just going to go kill Thanos, and ends up getting dragged into looking after these kids and fighting dragons and all sorts of ridiculous things. CM Punk and Cullen Bunn wrote it, with Scott Hepburn on art, and yeah, I think it ran for the right amount of time. I've got the whole run. Another one where I only have one issue was Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. This is written by Philippe Smith with artist Danilo S. Beyruth. Just really not a fan of Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. I'm more of a Danny Catch kind of guy. I don't know, it just tonally... It's got a nice tone, that's the thing, it's family orientated, but for me I was like, I don't want Ghost Rider to have that kind of tone. I want it to be a lot darker, so I didn't pick any more up. So we've got Generations. This is the first 2 issues, which is Hulk and the Phoenix. Obviously all of these have different artists and writers. I was really not sure if I wanted to pick these up or not, but it's a 10 issue series looking at, the past and present of certain heroes. The Hulk one really did disappoint me. The only thing that's exciting is there's a tease for Return to Planet Hulk in an Incredible Hulk 709, because they're doing the renumbering for Marvel Legacy. But the Phoenix one I actually really enjoyed, which I didn't think I would. But I think these are just going to be a really fun collection of 10 comics, and they're setting the stage for a lot of Marvel Legacy stuff, so they're worth picking up, I think. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy. Obviously it's a slightly different team, because you've got Space Knight Venom and Thing and Kitty Pryde and whatnot on there. It's written by Bendis with art by Valerio. This is really... It looks like it says Sheety. But I only read up to issue 7 of this. It was just kind of boring, realistically. The stuff that was going on really did not grab me enough. It's like I said, I read the first arc just to see and didn't really hold my interest. Now getting to some Hulk titles. So we had Hulk, and this was She-Hulk, and I really did love what they were trying to do with this title. She's suffering from post-traumatic stress after Bruce's death, and we're seeing her trying to keep things together in her work life. One of the things that kept hooking me was the Maisie character and her secrets and whatnot. But I only collected up to issue 4. The thing with me, and I know it sounds stupid because I know they were trying to do something different with this book, but I just wanted a Hulk book. I wanted to see her being more destructive. It's written by Mariko Tamaki with artist Nico Leon. But yeah, I just didn't pick any more up because I could appreciate what they were trying to do, and it was interesting. Basically, it's my own impatience that I'm like, yeah, but when is she going to be Hulk? I don't want to read 3 more issues and you not be Hulk. Then we've got the book I was most excited for, which was Totally Awesome Hulk, because Hulk is my favourite, and it's written by Greg Pak, so I was like, that's awesome. And Frank Cho is on art, and it's Amadeus Cho as Hulk. It is a new Hulk, and at first I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. It's a very different Hulk, the same powers and everything, but very different mind behind it. So I was very interested by it. However, I only got up to issue 14 because the book started becoming over the top silly. This artist is German Peralta, and by that I mean Hulk played basketball for like 2 issues, and I just was like, do you know what, this is over ridiculous now. This is not Hulk, stop this. I have the whole run for All New Inhumans. Really enjoyed the Inhuman stories, because obviously this is looking at some of the newer guys like Flint and Naja. A big story arc was Flint and his family, which was awesome. So you've got Saul, Asmus and Caselli worked on this. By this time you've got Asmus and Marcellus working on this. And just pleasantly surprised by it, because I know Marvel's trying to push the Inhumans, but I didn't know how much I'd enjoy that. But it turns out quite a lot. Again, we've got the whole run of Uncanny as well, for similar reasons. We're looking more at the Royals, looking at a lot of dysfunction within the royal family. Black Bolt was really interesting throughout, seeing the Silent Room was great. So I've got Sewell and McNiven on this. But as I said, there was some Civil War II stuff that went on throughout all of this as well, which was quite interesting to see. I did really enjoy the team. Then we got RB Silver penciling by the end. Then we've got 2 events, which I kind of count as one event, because we had Death of X, which was the setup for Inhumans versus X-Men, just a sort of 4-issue series, which this was okay. I enjoyed it enough. It's got Jeff Lemire and Charles Soule, Aaron Kuda drawing it. But it's like I said, this was more of a stepping stone to Inhumans versus X-Men. The stack I have for this story is like that because I bought every single tie-in for some reason. All the X-Men ones through the 3 X-Men titles. I think there was some Deadpool and the Mercs for Money tie-ins. Obviously the Inhumans tie-ins, like all of it. I think the thing that interests me most actually was Maximus's quest throughout this to make more Terrigen. Because obviously you had the Inhumans X-Men went to war because of the Terrigen clouds. One was destroyed. The X-Men wanted to destroy the other one, otherwise Earth would be inhabitable. But if it gets destroyed, then the Inhumans can't make any more new humans. I'm not a massive fan of the newer X-Men books. I liked the Inhumans, but it was a weird event. You got Charles Soule writing, Kenneth Rocafort artists. Obviously, this had loads of different artists and writers because of all the tie-ins and everything. Yet a lot of the tie-ins really pointless, really didn't add a lot to it. You could easily just pick up the 6-7 issues of the main series. We have Monsters Unleashed, which was an event which made no sense, which came out of nowhere, which I got the whole thing, and it's written by Cullen Bunn with, I think it's got literally like a different artist on each book. This I didn't really enjoy. This was just to set up a title that was also going to be called Monsters Unleashed. The coolest part was seeing some of the older monsters that our heroes had fought against, fighting these new monsters. But all in all, this was such a nothing event, if I'm honest. Moon Knight, a book that I was really interested in because I know nothing about Moon Knight. And this was just a headfuck of a book, very psychological. It's fantastically written in that you don't know what's real and what's not. You want to support the character, but at times you think he might actually be crazy. It's Jeff Lemire writing it and Greg Smallwood on art. I like when they do this, when they tell you this arc is part 1 of 5, and I thought, okay, I'll read the first arc then. I really like the art in it. Again, it's quite trippy feeling. I read the first arc and was like, that's kind of enough for me personally. So then I did pick up issue 6 as well, just to kind of properly see it off. This was the start of a new arc, part 1 to 4. But I didn't really want to read any further than that. This has loads of artists on it, fair enough. This next book is the book I hated the most, and I've said many times, Nova. The only thing that kept me reading this was the mystery of his dad. His dad not being in the book was more interesting than Nova. I do not like Sam Alexander Nova. This was written by Sean Ryan with artist Corey Smith. I just really didn't like this book. It was just, I'm a sucker for a mystery in a book. So I ended up collecting it till issue 6, which even shocked me. We collected Obi-Wan and Anakin. The only reason I picked this up was because Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship is something that I feel should just get expanded upon time and time again, because there's so many years and we have like the shows that do it. But I wanted to read this as well, and this was just a fun little chapter, an adventure that they go on. Got Charles Soule writing and Marco Cicciotto on art. And it's always fun to just explore different corners of the Star Wars universe as well. Got Power Man and Iron Fist I was really excited for. I really didn't like this book. I didn't really like the writing. I didn't really like the art. Written by David Walker with Sanford Green as the artist. Yeah, I couldn't get into this book enough. Again, I was like, okay, I'll read the first arc. So I've got up to issue 5. Does that say 5? It does now. Issue 5. Who's drawing this then? Flaviano. I think it's mainly because I'm used to a very different kind of Luke Cage. So a darker Luke Cage, you know, beating people up to find his kid in New Avengers Luke Cage. We have Punisher, and probably one of the few books I'm fairly disappointed I did drop it. It was just one of those, it came at a time where I really needed to cut down on my titles, because I was getting 15 odd titles a week, whereas now I think I get 2 or 3. So I really did need to cut down, but I was sad to cut the Punisher title, because it's written by Becky Cloonan, with Steve Dillon on art. The art's great. It's simple, sometimes difficult to make people out, but this title really went dark places without being overly uncomfortable, and was just kind of like a really good, solid Punisher title. I read up to issue 6 of it, and Face is such a dark villain. Secret Wars, yay. So I did actually finish Secret Wars, because this was what kicked off the Comic Comments show and the main interest. This was the first proper thing I started to pick up. This was when I really started to get into comic books. It was first year of uni, and I started buying more back issues of trades so I could see what came before. And then this was my jumping on point, where I've read all the events and everything since and been collecting my weeklies. And you know what? Secret Wars I found so difficult to read while I was reading it. Once it's collected and you read the whole thing, it's great. Because those issues where not a lot happens, it's not as noticeable, because it's just a part of the story when you read it as a whole. Obviously, it was weird that it was a way to write out the Fantastic Four, wasn't it? And alter things a little bit, merge the Ultimate Universe with this universe. Written by Jonathan Hickman with Ezard Rivik on art, and the art is incredible in these books. I think there was only one Secret Wars tie-in that I actually picked up, and that was Ultimate End. I'd never read anything of the Ultimate Universe, but from what I'd heard, most of it wasn't great unless it was Spider-Man. But I just kind of I thought, why not? I'll see the last Ultimate story and see the merge of the Ultimate Universe with the regular 616 universe. And this is written by Bendis with art by Bagley. We have Amazing Spider-Man. And again, this was one of the big titles they were really behind. You've got Slott writing it, Dan Slott, with Giuseppe Camuncoli. He's drawing it. I've got issues 1 to 28, and it's worth noting I have all of Clone Conspiracy, Dead No More, including the tie-ins, so the Silk Prowler, all the tie-ins. I've got all of that event. And it's an event that was my first experience with clones. I didn't think it was that bad. It had some really good moments, some good dilemmas for Peter, like does he bring back Uncle Ben or not? A lot of the twists weren't great in it and were very noticeable very early on. This Spider-Man title is both good and bad for the same reason. Character growth is important. He's got Parker Industries. He's now an adult and he's running a company. He's got all this new tech, which is great. Character growth. But I'm also sat here I really miss him just swinging around New York, being that character. And They introduced a lot of new villains and whatnot, and I missed old Peter Parker, basically. You know, I read through the Clone Conspiracy and all of that, and so I read up to just before Secret Empire, his big battle with Norman Osborn. The reason I was like, right, no, I've had enough, is because of Harry being like, well, maybe I should be the Goblin again. And I'm like, for Christ's sake. So I just couldn't really stomach anymore. Who's drawing this? Stuart Immonen. We've got Secret Empire. And I got all the before Secret Empire stuff. There was a couple of issues that led into it. Really enjoyed this event way more than I thought I would. You got Nick Spencer and Steve McNiven working on this. I think the artist may change though. Obviously it's the idea that Hydra finally wins, and we see a massive struggle between, you know, there's loads of different groups of heroes all in different situations. This event started slow as hell, and with each issue got better, and for that I can forgive it because I love it at the moment. I love where it's at. It's going to lead into Marvel Legacy, and I've looked, and Marvel Legacy is another weird one where they're renumbering stuff, and it's a jumping on point again for people, but a lot of it is just title, like they did with Marvel Now 2.0, where the titles were actually just carrying on the same, but they'd have a Marvel Now issue 1 printed on them, so nah. But I'm going to pick up the Marvel Legacy issue 1 special thing that they do. But yeah, to be honest, there's been some moments, some proper, it's when like the heroes rally, where like they get beaten down, and obviously they're trying to fight their way back up, and like they're being rallied by people like Sam Wilson and stuff, and in those moments I'm like, fuck yes, I'm just so into this book. We have Spider-Man Deadpool, and speaking of which, I did get all of Till Death Do Us, which ran through this, Mercs and Deadpool. I collected all of that, which was a fairly lame Deadpool crossover story, but still. I've got issues 1 to 8 of this, because I did love the humour and stuff, but again, it was a book that I could drop quite happily. So have they, yep, Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness working on this. But yeah, it's like I said, the humour's on point. It is great. This is probably actually my favourite, like, Spider-Man was written when these were coming out. I can see the bottom of the pile, don't worry, guys. Spidey, which I was like, oh, it's Spider-Man fighting his original villains and swinging around, okay, cool. But it's also so aimed at kids that I was just like, I can't really enjoy this as much as I would like to. Robbie Thompson's writing it with Nick Bradshaw as the artist. I only got up to issue 4. One thing I liked was just this opening page, where it's just literally the tiniest glimpse of his origin. So this has Andre Lima on art. Another big event which I enjoyed the hell out of was Standoff. I got all of the whole damn thing. Really interesting concept, and laid the groundwork for obviously Secret Empire and whatnot. The idea of having Kobik as a sentient cosmic cube, and the prison idea of sort of altering reality. So instead of it being a prison, you just had all these supervillains just living normal lives because they didn't know any better, and just it turning into this big battle with the different Avengers teams and all sorts. It's just a really good event, and I really enjoyed it. And at the time, when they made Steve Rogers young again, I was like, this is the greatest thing to happen ever. And then they ruined it by making him Hydra. A book I was super excited for was Unworthy Thor, just to get the answer from Original Sin. That's literally all I can say about it. Jason Aaron writing it. Olivier Coipel drawing it, and the book is gorgeous, I must say. And it is a fun book, because at the end of the day, Thor's, he stays Odin's son. He is the unworthy Thor. It's basically just we didn't forget. We'll start answering some questions from Original Sin, and I'm like, thank you. I've just got the reason I've got this here on its own is because it's got Apocalypse Wars on it, and I bought all the Apocalypse Wars issues that ran through the 3 different X-Men titles, telling 3 different Apocalypse stories to make up Apocalypse Wars. So different artists, different writers throughout the whole thing. Actually kind of enjoyed it. All three stories were interesting. We saw different horsemen pop up. We saw some of Kid Apocalypse in his past. The stuff with Angel and it being like a cult, like all of it was just quite interesting. Some of the only proper X-Men stuff I've read since All New All Different. So then finally we're going to finish off with X-Men 92. I was really excited for this because I was like, it'll be just like the show, and it wasn't, so that made me sad. So I picked up the first arc. It says Chris Sims and Chad Bowers writing and Alti Firmansar on art. But that's all the stuff that I've basically been reading since I started collecting Secret Wars and beyond. It's like I said, Secret Empire I'm reading still, Doctor Strange, I'm picking up the Generations books, and looking at the future of things, yeah, with Marvel Legacy, tempted to get Incredible Hulk, see what the Return to Planet Hulk stuff is. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is just my crappy backdrop because I'm in my room and not the living room, and that is because we've had an alarm going off downstairs for like 3 days now and no one can seem to turn it off. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out. Down below is links to social media and some competition news, all that good kind of stuff. Be seeing you in the next one.